What's up, everyone? I'm Ethan, and I'm here with my boy Garrett.
What's up?
And welcome to HIVE Sports, where we talk all things NFL and college football. Today, we're going to be going over our top 10 Dynasty wide receivers for the 2025 season. I'm going to let Garrett take the lead as our resident Dynasty expert. He's a guy with a lot of knowledge, so I'm excited to see what his top 10 list looks like.
Resident Dynasty degenerate, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm just a guy in way too many leagues. Definitely addicted to it. My favorite fantasy format. I mean, it's just a great time, you know. You can kind of play the role of a GM, and age is important. You can kind of be out here trying to build dominant dynasties for years to come. And,
You're passionate.
It's a blast. And one thing you do need, I've learned over the years to dominate in Dynasty is you got to have deep wide receivers, right? I mean, because it's a position that ages arguably the best out of running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Running back is definitely like a shorter lifespan compared to receivers.
100%.
So you can build a staple of dominant receivers and then just be really hard to beat for a long time. But we're going to get into our top 10 Dynasty wide receivers here at HIVE Sports today. And starting at, let's just jump into number 10. It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe some people would expect him to have been higher on this list, especially coming into last year. And a guy who maybe not quite met expectations just yet, but we're still pretty bullish on him. All right, starting at number 10 is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe one of the highest rated rookies of all time last year at the wide receiver position. Having a father in the Hall of Fame doesn't hurt, and he has the prototypical size, 6'4". He's got the athleticism. Some people question his long speed a little bit, especially after his rookie year, but I don't think Kyler did him a ton of favors either at times. So what are your thoughts on Marv, E?
Yeah, what's interesting is I feel like a lot of people forget just how talented he was. I mean, like you said, he was a guy coming into last season's draft as probably one of the highest rated wide receivers I've seen in a while coming out of college. And it was just an interesting situation. It seemed like at times Arizona wasn't wanting to or willing to give him the ball at times. I think if you put him in a situation like Nabers was in, where he was the only piece of the offense, I think we'd be less skeptical of him being in our top 10 dynasty rankings.
Yep, and I think that a lot of those layup routes, they were kind of giving Trey McBride, whereas in New York, they were giving those easy gimme routes to Malik Nabers because they didn't really have a Trey McBride, obviously. So they're using Marv down the field more. Kyler was kind of struggling. The offensive line was struggling at times. So I don't think we got to see the best of Marv, but he's a guy who he can work his magic on the sideline. He has incredible body control, especially for his size. I mean, he's such a long dude as well, and I think he's going to be a red zone weapon for years to come.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a priority of the Cardinals to make sure that Marvin Harrison takes a leap year two. There's no way that this offense is going to progress as much as they want to if Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't, an elite wide receiver like he should be in this league.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of a hard decision for us here at 10, at least for me. I was tempted to throw in maybe like a Ladd McConkey, maybe a Travis Hunter sneaks his way in here. So I was a little tempted to switch it up. It's kind of like prospect fatigue at this point with Marv, I think, because we've heard about how great he's supposed to be for so long. And then he only puts up like 800 or 900 yards as a rookie, and everyone's super disappointed. But that's still a good rookie season for a guy, and there's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah, and I think the targets weren't as bad as people thought. I mean, most games he was getting 6 to 10 targets, especially towards the latter half of the season. I think converting those at a higher percentage will be what needs to happen next season for him to really take that next leap. But overall talent, I don't like just relying on one season and saying, oh yeah, I want Ladd McConkey over a guy with the talent of Marvin Harrison Jr., right?
Yeah, and I think we can kind of compare Marv's rookie season to the guy ahead of him on our list, Drake London. I think they had pretty similar rookie production, and then Drake London finally broke out last year, which I think was year 3 for him coming out. So we could see a similar trajectory for Marv, where it maybe takes him 2 or 3 years to truly break out into being a top 10 guy, but I think he has it in his potential for sure.
100%.
All right. Our number 9 dynasty wide receiver currently is Drake London, and he's a guy coming off a huge end to the season last year. I believe his last game of the regular season, he had 3 touchdowns. It was with Michael Penix. So you can see the future is bright. His new quarterback really loves targeting him, and he's a guy who can absorb those targets. I mean, at 6'4", he's a red zone weapon. There's a lot of ways you can use this guy. He's a threat after the catch. A lot of fun to watch out there in Atlanta.
Yeah, 100%. I like the fact that you comped his year 1 and year 2 to Marvin Harrison's year 1, right? I mean, year 1, Drake London was drafted higher than people thought he was going to. He was the first wide receiver drafted. Came in, had 800 plus yards and 4 touchdowns, which both those numbers are lower than Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, right?
Yep.
And then you go year 3, what does Drake London do? Have a career season, almost 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's a guy that's still super young. I mean, he's 23, and this is going into his 4th season in the league, right? Yeah. So plus kind of revamped at quarterback, young. Michael Penix likes to sling it. So I think Drake London's in a good situation here for the next foreseeable future to really get some good workload.
100%. And it was really, really satisfying to see him get a good quarterback back there, because Kirk Cousins was kind of like at the end of his career, his arm seemed to just die at a certain point last year. So when Michael Penix finally went in there and was slinging it around a little bit, it was a lot more fun to watch Drake London out there, and he finished so strong. So you gotta think he has a lot of upside heading into next year. I think he could be a guy who puts up 1,300 plus yards and maybe close to 10 touchdowns with his physicality. You just see him. He's hard to stop. He's hard to bring down, and he's always trying to get into the end zone.
Yeah, and I think just with Bijan also improving that run game, coming into another season, that's just only going to make the passing game that much better, right? And Michael Penix is a great play-action passer, and I think Drake London is going to really benefit from that. So I'm definitely bullish on him, and I think over the next few years, Drake London's going to be a guy that could see his way climbing up this list for sure.
Yeah, and I think whenever you have a young quarterback back there trying to prove himself, trying to make a name for himself, he's going to have someone who he relies on as his safety blanket. And I think that's Drake London for Michael Penix. So he's going to be a PPR monster in the coming years, just commanding a ton of targets. And I think the state of the wide receiver position is pretty strong if he's our number 9 wide receiver right now, I think. So that might be a good point to look at our number 8 guy, who is going to be Nico Collins, playing with CJ Stroud in Houston. All right, our number 8 wide receiver in Dynasty Fantasy Football for the upcoming season. It's going to be Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. And this is a guy who he showed he can be a clear alpha number 1 wide receiver last year. Had a little bit of trouble staying healthy at times, but when he's out there on the field, you can see his top 5, top 10 type talent. And he's a home run threat every time he touches the ball. He's huge, he's athletic, and there's a lot to like about his game, and it's very hard to find weaknesses, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what an ideal frame for a wide receiver. Great route runner. He's a guy that is going to be CJ Stroud's security blanket. He's a guy that, as the Texans are going to go, Nico Collins has to go, right? And you mentioned his health. Last season, he missed 5 games, and he still eclipsed 1,000 yards receiving. I mean, in 12 games. It's crazy. I mean, at that point, he's averaging 90 yards a game through those 12 games that he played. So he's a guy that if this Texan team wants to take that next step forward, he's going to have to, be even better than he's been in the past few seasons, right?
Yeah, and I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he'll be able to do that. Especially with the Texans bringing in some other weapons, I think it's going to take some attention off of him. They got Christian Kirk in the slot, got Jaden Higgins, who a lot of people actually comp to Nico. Just from an athletic profile perspective, they're the same height. Pretty productive in college. Slept on to a degree, especially Nico coming from Michigan, where they didn't pass as much necessarily. But Jaden Higgins is a guy who's going to take some pressure off. You got Jalen Noel as well. there's going to be a lot less resources to devote to Nico, and that's always dangerous with someone of his talent level.
100%. I mean, Stroud had that sophomore slump, and I know for sure he's coming into this season wanting to prove the doubters wrong, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that had a great rookie season. Year 2 wasn't great, but you also have to realize that his top 3 receivers were all out at one point in the season. And so he didn't have much. His offensive line wasn't great. And so I think if Stroud can, has a healthy Nico Collins out there, I think that offense is going to start moving for sure.
Yeah, and I think Stroud is another guy, maybe a potential dynasty buy, but that's for another day. So
another video, yeah.
Another day. All right. Well, moving on to our next wide receiver, it's going to be Puka Nacua at number 7. All right, so our number 7 ranked wide receiver in Dynasty Fantasy Football is going to be Puka Nacua, another guy who we actually had in our high stakes FFPC team last year. So when he was hot and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow were hot, we were cooking, man. So
that team was rolling.
He's a fun guy to watch, man. I mean, he's out there competing with targets with Cooper Kupp, just clearly taking the role as he took the mantle right from Kupp, and he's the clear number 1 in LA now.
Man, I remember 2 seasons ago when I picked him up on the waiver wire a couple of games into the season. He's just a guy that does everything for the Rams, right? I mean, he catches screens, he can do end arounds, he can run those deep outs and just be open. Like, he's a great route runner, but he also knows how to fill the space very well. A guy that's reliable and can catch the ball, and he's just tough as nails, man. I've had him on I've had him on multiple fantasy teams 2 seasons in a row. And besides being injured the beginning of the season last season, I mean, he's been nothing but great every time he plays. Like, every game has just been, near exactly what you want as a fantasy owner, right?
Yeah, you just got to love the reckless abandon that he plays with. He's always willing to put his body on the line. And that's maybe one of the only concerns I have about his game is he just, he'll be diving for every ball, and he's trying to run through people, and he's taking hits, but he's such a fun guy to watch. And I mean, to be the Rams got such a great value on him. I really can't speak highly enough of the talent evaluation that it took to identify this guy coming out of BYU, because I mean, his numbers weren't great at BYU. It's not like he was a can't miss prospect. He was a day 3 guy, I believe, and they got such an incredible steal on Puka, because he's largely the focal point of their offense now.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the focal point, and I think bringing in Devontae Adams is really going to help him, shine, because I think a lot of people are going to still have eyes on Devontae. Devontae still has a lot of tools that make him a dangerous wide receiver, and I think, when Kupp, there were a lot of games where Kupp was almost like the decoy, and Puka just took off from there. So I think he's a guy that is still young at 23. He's getting better and better. He's a hard worker. He's a guy that's, very good at just finding his spots. Mm-hmm. I think he's a guy that's gonna still have a great season this next season.
So what do you think? One thing that I've heard people bring up is kind of the fact that he plans on retiring as soon as he hits the age of 30. And that actually, believe it or not, affected his dynasty value just a bit when that came out earlier this offseason. And I don't know, for me, it's just like that doesn't move the needle at all for me, because I mean, he's just about to turn 24 years old. Even if he does retire at 30, that gives you 6 dominant years. I mean, that's more than enough. That's longer than a lot of dynasty leagues even last, So
yeah, I mean, good for him for wanting to save his body at that point. That's 8 years of NFL football at probably going to be a high level, and I think that's not that does not come into my consideration for the value that he is at this point.
No, I think he's a great value, and he belongs inside that top 10. And he's pretty close with the guys I think immediately ahead of him as well, but we couldn't put him ahead of one guy, and that's the sun god, Amon Ra St Brown for the Detroit Lions. All right, so moving on to our number 6 wide receiver in Dynasty is Amon Ra St Brown. Super hard to keep out of the top 5, maybe, a slight to him in some ways, but even being at 6 it's as testament to his talent with just how many talented wide receivers there are in the NFL landscape right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that just every season in fantasy, I feel like goes underrated. I mean, he's just an elite route runner who can get open in the most important situations. You can't cover him one on one, and he's a guy that just eats up those targets from Goff, right? I mean, 1,200 plus yards last season. He's reliable. He doesn't drop the ball very much.
No, yeah.
He is a guy that also gets those red zone targets. I think he was like top three, if not the number one red zone target in the NFL last season. So that's super valuable, right? As much as getting those catches and those yards are important, like those touchdowns can really add up, right?
Oh, and talk about a good value. I know Puka Nacua was a great value. Amon Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round draft pick, for those of you that forgot. So the Lions got an absolute steal on him coming out of USC. I mean, this guy is just a dog, and you see it in his genes, his bloodline, his dad being, a great Olympic weightlifter and having that charisma about him. But he just believes he's that dude, and he goes out there and he
is that dude.
He proves it. He proves it every game, And a lot of times he's coming up biggest in the biggest games, and that's just the mark of a true superstar. So if you have Amon Ra on your fantasy teams, you're definitely lucky. Not even 26 years old yet, still only 25 years old. A lot of good football ahead of him.
100%. He's a guy that he's also just reliable. Like, he's not a guy that has the yips. He wants the ball in the biggest situations, like you had mentioned. I mean, he had 12 touchdowns last season as a 6 foot maybe wide receiver. He's a guy that you don't think of getting those red zone touches, but he gets them, and he's utilized in a lot of unique ways, right? As you can see in this play right here, where he's taking it end around and throwing it to Jared Goff for a touchdown. So he's a guy that every single year in the draft, he gets picked much lower than I thought that he was going to. And every single year, he always outperforms that.
Yeah, you just see, he's a master route runner. He knows how to find the open space in a defense. He's an expert at sitting in those soft gaps in his own defense. I mean, he's almost unstoppable one-on-one with any cornerback. It's good luck if you're one-on-one against this guy. So he's a fantastic guy to have on your team. And I think it was really hard between Amon Ra and the guy we have ahead of him. But I know the guy we have ahead of him is your boy, so I had to give him proper love.
Come on,
that's going to be
baby.
Brian Thomas Jr. Moving into our top 5 Dynasty wide receivers. Number 5 is Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie from a season ago. Absolutely blew everyone's expectations out of the water. I mean, I know we were high on him entering the season, but I don't think anyone expected him to vault himself into top 5 range right out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a little bit more of a niche, just deep ball threat that was still going to produce. But he showed us that he can be a true wide receiver 1. I mean, especially in that second half of the season, which he had Mac Jones as his quarterback, but as the last 7 games of the season when T-Law was injured. But I mean, double-digit targets towards the end of the season, over 1,200 yards, almost 1,300 yards as a rookie, 10 touchdowns, played in every single game, and just his snap percentage was going up towards the end of the season. Like, he's playing every down. He's a guy that just has the tool set to really be dangerous. I mean, he creates separation. He's a deep ball threat, but he also can get open in those short yardage zones when you need him. A guy that I was stoked exceeded his expectation, and I think the Jags reached a little bit on him during the draft the prior season too, and he exceeded everyone's expectations.
You know what they say? I mean, an overpay today is an underpay tomorrow for some of these guys. So if you got a guy and you love him and you love his upside, you gotta reach for him a little bit. Then sometimes that might be the best move you can make. I mean, look at this guy and how he absolutely just blew away expectations. He's such 100%. A fun talent. I mean, the thing that I am most amazed at is his first step, because he's a guy he's 6'3", 6'4", over 200 pounds, but his 10-yard split at the combine was 1.49 seconds. That's as quick, if not quicker, than guys like Tank Dell, which are, Tank Dell's $150, $160.
Yeah.
So to have that first step, and then he's also a 4.3 40 guy, so he has a first step, and then he also can accelerate and pull away from guys. So to have that physique, it really is reminiscent of someone like Julio Jones. It's truly special measurables, and he showed that he's not just a size speed guy. He can create, he can separate, and he's a complete wide receiver. But
100%. And I'm reading a stat here where he had 11 games as a rookie where he had over 75 yards receiving, which is the most in the Super Bowl era, right? Yeah. If you would have asked people that with the Jags offense last season, if their rookie wide receiver was going to be, breaking records, you would be, people would think you're crazy. But now you have Liam Cohen, right, who has this offensive mastermind that utilizes wide receivers very well. T-Law coming back, hopefully healthy, and kind of hopefully has this chip on his shoulder to say, hey, I'm still that generational talent that, the Jaguars drafted me to be. Plus Travis Hunter, another guy that's going to take looks away. There's going to be a lot of people looking at Travis Hunter as a, red zone threat because of his, awkward body, awareness and the way that he's able to kind of maneuver in the air. I mean,
dude,
Brian Thomas Jr.
Come on. I don't think we can hype this up enough. I really don't. Like if you're a fan of these guys, I mean, this might actually open a buy window for Brian Thomas Jr., right? Because some people might be a little, Travis Hunter's coming in there. How many targets is he going to take away from Brian Thomas? If this opens up even a slight gap, a slight chance to buy Brian Thomas Jr. at any kind of reasonable price, I think you have to jump on it as a dynasty owner right now. But 100%. It's going to be so much fun to see how him and Travis Hunter team up together. That's just two incredible athletes, incredible wide receivers, and T-Law, man, I think he's set for a career year next year.
I mean, and Liam Cohen has had two elite wide receivers that have both eaten in seasons, right? It's not like he just relies on one wide receiver. Both these guys can definitely get theirs, and I think the new energy, the new wave of Jacksonville Jaguars is coming. I think there's a lot more swagger in the room with Brian Thomas Jr. being the kind of upside that we saw last season. Especially when T-Law got injured, there was a lot of kind of a dark cloud over the Jags, and I think now they're bringing in Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr. is coming into year 2, Liam Cohen's hopefully bringing in this high-powered offense. Hey, if you want to buy something, buy the Jaguars, baby.
Watch out. All right. The Jacksonville Jaguars giving us our number 5 dynasty wide receiver. At number 4, it's going to be a Dallas Cowboy by the name of CeeDee Lamb. All right. So our number 4 dynasty wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, just a year removed from being the top overall wide receiver in fantasy. This is a guy that it was tough to keep him out of our top 3. But I mean, maybe a little bit of Giants bias here, but there was a certain somebody who took his place in that top 3. But CeeDee Lamb's still an absolutely elite talent in his own right. If you're lucky enough to have a dynasty share or two, he's made you very happy over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real. CeeDee is an elite route runner who can just change the game. He has all the tool sets of being a wide receiver 1. Obviously, right? He's been a wide receiver 1. If you can, shape your team around a guy like CeeDee Lamb, you're gonna be really happy. And I hope the Cowboys, that offense last year was a little stagnant. I know Dak was injured at times, and it was kind of just a rough season for them. And kind of like I've been saying with some of the other guys we've talked about, if this Cowboys offense wants to take that next step, CeeDee Lamb is going to need to really produce, right? He still had 1,100 yards last season, only played in 15 games, actually nearly 1,200 yards. The touchdown production was a little bit low with only 6. You'd like to see a little bit more of that with a true wide receiver 1, but there's nothing, I can't speak highly enough of what he has when it comes to like his tangible qualities, right?
Yeah, and he was still out here putting up pretty big games with Cooper Rush as his quarterback for a lot of last season. So the only thing with the Cowboys is you have to keep Dak healthy. You have to keep CeeDee Lamb healthy, right? Because they kind of refuse to spend high draft capital on other weapons, whether that be additional wide receivers or running backs.
Yeah.
They kind of are skimping and going with late round guys, but their offense really it's Dak and Lamb. They're going to go as far as those two guys lead them. And for fantasy, I mean, that's great. As long as CeeDee can stay healthy and as long as Dak can stay healthy, that's the only thing, So I'd like to see them add to the receiver room and take a little pressure off of CeeDee. eventually, but with Jerry Jones kind of losing his faculties a little bit, we never know. We never know when that's actually going to happen, do we?
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I like to think often that the better the run game is, the more opportunities the wide receiver is going to be open and have less focus on them, right?
Yeah.
And so when you think of Dallas and the fact that they didn't upgrade in their running back room, in fact, at this point, it's kind of a downgrade as to what they had last season. It is a little bit scary of, okay, now teams can just focus on CD. But like you mentioned, if he's just the entire offense, then of course he's going to get he's going to get those targets. And he's going to get the, 10 plus targets a game. And with somebody who has the talent of CeeDee Lamb, you could put 3 guys on him and he's still going to get open, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really hard to find negatives about CD, and he's such a consistent PPR producer. He's always commanding targets, and even when he has, challenging circumstances around him, he's still catching one-handed balls. He's doing everything he possibly can to produce out there. So CD's a great, great high-end wide receiver one to have on your dynasty team. And if people are getting excited about some of these other guys and, you have a chance to upgrade to CD off of maybe one of these rookies or a couple of these rookie picks, I think you gotta take advantage of that. But moving into our top 3 dynasty wide receivers, number 3 is going to be my boy Malik Nabers with the New York Giants. All right, so moving into our top 3 wide receivers in dynasty. Number 3, maybe a little high for some people, but I think this is just about right. It's Malik Nabers, number 3. It's going to be right ahead of CeeDee Lamb just by the smallest of margins. He's a little bit younger, right? I mean, he's 21. Yeah. CD is 26. So I think that actually is maybe the tiebreaker for me because they're both such dominant talents, and I'd love to have both of them on my team if I could. But, I mean, Malik not even being 22 years yet of age, and he has quarterback upgrades coming in this year. He produced with maybe one of the ugliest quarterback situations that a rookie wide receiver had last year. He was still one of the top producers of the class. And, I mean, guys like Tommy DeVito, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock. It's really ugly out there. And he's still putting up crazy numbers week after week. And his talent is undeniable.
Yeah, over 1,200 yards in 15 games as a rookie with me at quarterback.
That might have been an upgrade.
Yeah, you don't want me at quarterback, but I could throw the ball to Malik Nabers and be successful because the guy's just so talented. I mean, it's when you look at his frame, it's like, okay, he's not a very big wide receiver, but he just knows how to get open. He's impossible to cover one-on-one. I'm going to say this right now. The Giants finished the season ahead of the Cowboys.
Okay.
I think he's a guy that, for me, I think the Giants are trying to move that offense and progress it forward, which is why I give him the nod over CD, right? I know you mentioned the age, which is a factor.
Yeah.
But I think the Giants is just going to be a better team next season. I think they are wanting to upgrade their quarterback. They are improving their run game. They're improving their defense. And the Cowboys, the main thing they needed was a freaking running back and some more offensive weapons. And what do? Nothing.
Yeah.
So for me, I like the fact that you have a guy who had nothing last season in Malik Nabers, who still performed super well. And now you're bringing in more weapons around him to help him not be the focal point all the time. I mean, I'm more bullish on the Giants than the Cowboys, and so of course I'm going to pick the guy that, if it's close, I'm going to pick the guy on the more bullish team.
Yeah, and if there's a rookie wide receiver that can go out there and put up 30, 40 plus fantasy points with Drew Lock at the end of the season, I mean, that won people $1 million in DFS, right? Because no one expected him to put up those kind of numbers with Drew frickin' Lock as his quarterback, right? So he's just willing his way to fantasy points. But next year they might actually have some real serviceable quarterback play. I think Brian Dable is good at scheming his best players' touches, and Malik is going to be the absolute focal point of that offense moving forward.
Yeah, and I think people realize or forget that he's so explosive. 11 yards per reception. So, he's taking these catches that he's getting and he's making the most out of them, right? I'm looking at some stats against Indiana. 7 catches for 171.
Yeah.
It's not like he's just catching these, 3-yard slants and he's just, getting 10 catches for 30 yards. He's making the most out of every catch. He's incredible with the ball in his hands. He creates separation. He has that swagger with in him, and I think that he is going to be a guy that can help this Giants team. Hopefully, in the next couple of years, with an upgrading quarterback over the next couple of years, be a sneaky, division, potential winner, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing he doesn't get enough credit for is how smart he is too. Because I remember when the Hard Knocks were on, that year where everyone was roasting the Giants GM for not re-signing Barkley, which didn't age too well.
Yeah.
But I do think that I got to give him credit for his evaluation of Malik Nabers. And when they brought him in on the pre-draft visits and stuff, Dable was kind of quizzing him, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Roma Dunze. And consistently, Malik was just spitting back the right answers quicker than the other two. So he's a guy who's quick to think on his feet. And when you pair that with the kind of explosiveness and speed that Malik Nabers has, that's going to be really hard to stop. He's thinking one step ahead of people, and his body can keep up with his athleticism.
He's thinking one step ahead, and his body's 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Yeah, so he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think he takes a pretty sizable step forward in year 2. So well worth being a top 3 dynasty wide receiver. There might be some arguments, some haters. Feel free to leave a comment below if you're one of them. But we'll move on to our number 2 guy, and that's going to be Justin Jefferson. All right, so our dynasty wide receiver number 2. He had a new quarterback last year. People were kind of wondering how would he respond, how would he perform with Sam Darnold instead of Kirk Cousins. There was some people who kind of questioned that, right? And they took some other wide receivers ahead of him. He dropped a little bit in some drafts, but he really did not miss a beat with Sam Darnold last year, did he?
No, and here's my thing. To me, Justin Jefferson is the clear best wide receiver in the league when it comes to just his talent. The fact that he's had Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold as his quarterback during his career, and other times too, he's had 3rd and 4th string guys, coming in, guys that you don't even know. They're, remember who they. I think the season that Kirk, got hurt, there was like 3 or 4 different quarterbacks that everybody's like, who the heck are these guys?
Dobbs, there was a lot of guys.
And he's just a guy, he's just that talented. I don't care who you put at quarterback. Justin Jefferson's going to get open. And you're right. Last season, his ADP dropped significantly because Sam Darnold was that quarterback. And Sam Darnold had a career season because of Justin Jefferson. Yep. I mean, still producing, 1,500 yards last season with 10 touchdowns on a team that nobody was thinking of. I mean, he is just that talented.
Yeah, and I mean, the Vikings were much better than people thought they were going to be last year. And obviously, Justin Jefferson, just a huge reason why. But I think the one thing just keeping him out of the number 1 spot is the question mark of J.J. McCarthy versus Joe Burrow for Jamar Chase, right? I mean, we know Joe Burrow is a top-flight quarterback. He's a Tier 1 guy, and he's tied to Jamar Chase. But we don't know exactly what kind of quarterback J.J. McCarthy is going to be for the Vikings just yet. So I think that little bit of uncertainty is just what makes me give the nudge to Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and I mean, you give Justin Jefferson a middle of the pack quarterback, and he's far and away wide receiver 1 in this league. I mean, he's a guy that can catch the contested passes, but he's also a great route runner and gets open better than anybody in the league. He's a guy that can also really get up at the high point and he makes these miraculous catches that you just, in the biggest downs when they really need it the most. Everybody knows the ball's going to him, and he still, manages to perform.
Yeah, I mean, that LSU offense was hard to evaluate for some people because they kind of overthought it a little bit. Coming out of that rookie class, it was Joe Burrow, it was Justin Jefferson, it was Jamar Chase, and there was detractors of Joe Burrow saying, oh, he was just that good because he had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson to throw to. And then there was also kind of like vice versa, right? Some people questioned Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, and just simply because they said, hey, he had Joe Burrow and he had a historic offense, so maybe he just, just a result of that. So it was kind of an interesting dynamic because I know Jalen Reagor went ahead of Justin Jefferson in some dynasty drafts that I was a part of, some dynasty rookie drafts, which was obviously one of the biggest mistakes you could have made in recent dynasty history, right?
100%. Yeah.
So,
I mean, Justin Jefferson, I'm putting I'm planting the flag. To me, is going to be a Hall of Famer without a doubt. He's a guy that is going to be a top 3 wide receiver in the league for many, many years, and he's already been that, throughout all of his career. So, there's just so much to like about him, and like I was saying, if it wasn't for the questions at the quarterback, to me, he's the clear number 1 wide receiver, fantasy and dynasty rankings.
and who knows if JJ steps in and he's better than Darnold? You never know. Like maybe he steps in and he shows off that arm talent that helped Michigan win a national title, and he's actually an upgrade eventually to Sam Darnold. That's definitely in the range of outcomes, and I think he has the arm talent to actually take advantage of Jetta's skill set, more than a lot of quarterbacks that Jetta's has played with over the years. So
100%.
Definitely worthy of our number 2 spot, up there with our number 1, but we had to give the nudge to Ja'Marr Chase just because of that beautiful Bengals fantasy situation. All right, so our number 1 overall wide receiver is going to be Ja'Marr Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals, a guy who we had on our high stakes team.
Yeah,
Joe Burrow.
that stack.
Chase.
Yep.
I can't talk about it enough just because we thought we were finished that last night of the playoff matchup, and we were down by I think at least 50 or 60 points, and just these two got us enough points to get the victory and bring in over $1,000 in winnings for that game. So that was a great rush. I remember calling you right after. But Ja'Marr Chase is just such a difference maker. I mean, especially last year. He was the Triple Crown winner. So that showed up in fantasy for sure.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a guy that the ball is going to him in the biggest moments, and he just always outperforms those situations. Yep. We talked about it. I mean, although Ja'Marr Chase didn't know that we needed, 60 points to win our league, we just were watching that game and he was just unstoppable. And you can't not be bullish on a guy that has a top 5 quarterback as his quarterback, who's also a top 2 wide receiver in the league. Again, I was saying, we're talking about Justin Jefferson before this. Ja'Marr Chase has the contested catching ability. He has the route running ability to create separation. He has the body awareness to just catch those, tough, unorthodox passes. He's just a guy that can do it all.
And he turns into a running back almost after the catch. I mean, you see the way he's like just trucking guys. He's making people miss 2 or 3 or 4 missed tackles at a time. So pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, bless you. We're looking at a guy who had over 1,700 yards last season, 17 touchdowns. You watch his tape. I mean, I watched plenty of his games, obviously, since he was our big piece of our stack in our more expensive league last season. I mean, he's just a guy that they try to get him the ball in any ways, right? The screen game, the end around game, the deep balls, the digs across the field. I mean, they just utilize him in so many different facets, and he's just so talented.
He's a truly special talent. I mean, 4.3 speed at well over 200 pounds. He's just so hard to stop. And Joe Burrow, they have such incredible chemistry. They know where each other are going to be on the field. Joe Burrow he always puts it in a position where Ja'Marr Chase can run after the catch. So I don't think there's a more valuable pairing in Dynasty Fantasy Football right now than those two.
Well, and one thing too is, we had talked about in other videos where for Dynasty and Underdog or whatever fantasy league you're in, the latter half of the season is just so important, right? No matter what kind of fantasy field you're in. And for some reason, that's just what the Bengals do. They tend to always start a little bit slower, and that means both Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase. And then at the end of the season, they just take off running. And if you look at, some of Ja'Marr Chase's stats, I mean, it's exactly what you see. I mean, you see, 5, 6, 7 targets, and then it just ramps up 17, 15, 18, so on. And he just knows how to be that dude at towards the latter half of the season. And when it comes to fantasy and making those, decisions where, hey, week 14, 15, 16 are so important, especially when you're kind of getting to the championship rounds. I mean, that's so valuable.
100%. And I mean, he's the clear league winner last year, right? I mean, if you had Jamar Chase, you had a great chance of getting to the finals, getting to the championship, and I think the same goes for next year. They kept T. Higgins, right? I think that's pretty big. They kept the same nucleus of guys together.
Yep.
It's going to be really hard to double or triple team Jamar Chase. I mean, teams will still do it, but it'll be a little harder with T. Higgins there keeping defenses honest. So that's another thing that you like to see.
100%. Well, for those that stuck around this far in the video, we appreciate you tagging along for our top 10 wide receiver dynasty picks. Be on the lookout for our top 10 tight end video, top 10 running back, top 10 quarterbacks. Shout out to Garrett, our dynasty guru, our dynasty degen, for taking the lead on this. But yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Happy to do it, and I hope it was somewhat beneficial for you Dynasty junkies out there. So we'll catch you next time.